You ever felt like you're failing at being a good person? Not because you're out here committing crimes or being a menace to society, but because you don't quite fit the perfect, shiny mold of the movements you claim to support? Imagine standing in front of a jury of your peers, and they're looking at your Spotify Wrapped, your Netflix history, and your Amazon cart. They see the problematic rap music you blast in the car, the reality TV shows you binge watch that definitely don't empower anyone, and the fact that you occasionally enjoy the color pink or traditional, romantic tropes that the internet tells you are outdated. For a long time, there's been this unspoken rule that if you call yourself a feminist or an activist, or even just a socially conscious human being, you have to be a saint. You have to be a humorless, perfectly polished icon of virtue who never contradicts themselves. But Roxane Gay, in her transformative collection of essays appropriately titled Bad Feminist, walks into the room and flips the table on that entire idea. She argues that the pedestal we've built for ideal believers is actually a cage. In the next few minutes, we're going to look at why this book changed the conversation on identity, and why being a messy human might actually be the most radical thing you can do. Let's dive into the first big idea, the myth of the essential feminist. Think of this like a social justice report card. Many of us grow up thinking there is an essential version of every identity. To be a good feminist, you must hate men, never wear makeup, love every piece of literature written by a woman regardless of quality, and have a PhD in gender studies. Roxane Gay calls BS on this. She introduces us to the concept of being a bad feminist not as a confession of guilt, but as a badge of reality. In the book, Gay famously admits that she likes thuggish rap music, even though the lyrics are often degrading to women. She admits she likes the color pink and that she sometimes wants a man to take charge. Through these personal anecdotes, she illustrates a profound point. Our preferences don't always align with our politics, and that's okay. The metaphor she uses is essentially a human Venn diagram. One circle is your political ideals: equality, justice, respect. The other circle is your messy, complicated human desires: pop culture, fashion, silly entertainment. We've been told these circles should be a perfect eclipse, but Gay shows us they only overlap in the middle. By calling herself a bad feminist, she's refusing to let the movement be defined by a narrow, unreachable perfection. She reminds us that feminism isn't a monolith. It's a house with many rooms, and some of those rooms might have some pretty questionable wallpaper. Moving into the second major lesson, we have to talk about the cultural mirror. Roxane Gay spends a significant portion of this book acting as a cultural surgeon, dissecting everything from the Hunger Games to Sweet Valley High. She treats pop culture not as mindless entertainment, but as the primary way we learn who we are allowed to be. Imagine you're looking into a mirror, but the mirror is cracked and only reflects certain parts of your face. That's how Gay describes the media's portrayal of women, especially women of color. She critiques how we consume trauma porn, or how we celebrate strong female characters who are actually just men with long hair and a bow and arrow. She challenges us to look at the stories we consume and ask, who is missing from this picture? This book teaches us that criticizing the things we love is the highest form of appreciation. You can love a movie while simultaneously acknowledging that its representation of race is abysmal. This is a vital skill in the modern world. Gay shows us that we don't have to cancel everything we enjoy, but we do have to look at it with our eyes wide open. We have to see the cracks in the mirror to understand why we feel so distorted when we look into it. The third big idea centers on the burden of representation. This is a concept that applies to almost every marginalized group. Imagine you're the only person in a room, and someone hands you a megaphone and says, "Speak for everyone who looks like you." It's an impossible, crushing weight. Gay discusses this through the lens of being a Black woman in academia and literature. In this book, she explains that when there are so few stories about a certain group, every single story is forced to be the story. If there's only one movie featuring a certain demographic, that movie has to be perfect. It has to represent every nuance, every struggle, and every victory. If it fails, it's seen as a failure of the entire group. This creates a scarcity mindset, where we fight over the scraps of representation. Roxane Gay argues for the right to be mediocre. She argues that true equality isn't just having one perfect hero, it's having the freedom to have as many messy, flawed, and even boring stories as everyone else. She wants us to stop looking for the one voice and start demanding a chorus. Now, let's get into the big idea that ties it all together: the complexity of privilege. Usually, when we talk about privilege, it feels like a finger-pointing exercise. But Roxane Gay approaches it with a refreshing, almost clinical honesty. She describes privilege not as something you should be ashamed of, but as a lens you didn't choose to wear. She acknowledges her own privileges, her education, her career success, while also navigating the ways she is marginalized as a woman of color and a person of size. She uses a metaphor of a backpack that we all carry. Some of us have bricks in our backpacks, and some of us have balloons, but we're all walking the same uphill path. The goal isn't to pretend you don't have balloons. It's to realize that, because you have them, you can help carry someone else's bricks. This book reframes the privilege conversation from who has it worse to how can we use what we have to make the path easier for everyone. It's a shift from guilt to agency, and it's one of the most practical applications of social theory you'll find in modern literature. Now, let's pivot to the critique. As much as Bad Feminist is a foundational text of the 2010s, it isn't without its flaws. From a transformative perspective, we have to look at how the book has aged. Published in 2014, a lot of the pop culture references feel like a time capsule. Does a deep dive into the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon still resonate in the 2020s? For some, these essays might feel like reading an old Twitter feed. Furthermore, some critics argue that by labeling herself a bad feminist, Gay inadvertently gave people an out to avoid doing the hard work of unlearning problematic behaviors. If you can just say, "Oh, I'm a bad feminist," does that become a shield against accountability? While Gay uses the term to embrace human complexity, there's a risk that it can be co-opted as an excuse for complacency. However, the core of her argument, that we should prioritize being human over being ideologically pure, remains a vital counter-argument to the often toxic cancel culture we see today. The book's strength is its vulnerability, but its weakness is that it sometimes prioritizes the personal so much that the political solutions can feel a bit blurry. So, what's the final verdict? Who should read Bad Feminist? If you are someone who feels activism burnout, that feeling that you'll never be woke enough or perfect enough to make a difference, this book is your permission slip. It is for the person who cares deeply about the world, but also really likes the wrong things. It's for anyone who feels like they're living in the contradictions of the 21st century. Roxane Gay doesn't give you a checklist of how to be a better person. Instead, she gives you a mirror that shows you it's okay to be a work in progress. The most actionable step you can take today, after hearing about this book, is what I call the inventory of contradiction. Sit down and write out 3 things you believe in, And then write out 3 things you enjoy that contradict those beliefs. Maybe you believe in environmentalism, but you love fast fashion. Maybe you believe in gender equality, but you love a movie that fails the Bechdel test. Instead of feeling guilty, ask yourself, how can I hold both of these truths at the same time? By acknowledging the contradiction, you stop wasting energy on performance and start focusing on actual progress. As Roxane Gay says, she'd rather be a bad feminist than no feminist at all. Perfection is the enemy of the good. And in a world that is increasingly polarized, embracing our badness might be the only way to stay human. This book is a reminder that you don't have to be a saint to be a force for change. You just have to be willing to show up messy and all. Roxane Gay shifted the goalposts from perfection to participation. And that is a legacy worth reading. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to dive deeper into the books that are actually shaping our culture, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're doing deep dives like this every week to help you navigate the world of ideas without having to read 1,000 pages yourself. Though, honestly, this is one book you should definitely have on your shelf.